The core game of Oblivion has a staggering number of quests, well over 200, but despite that impressive number, some of Bethesda's ideas never made it into the final game. This is 7 cut quests from Oblivion. In Shadenhall, there's a rumor that goes,
Devera Romalan is sure proud of the Newlands Lodge. I think she's especially happy that the Red Queen drinks there.
However, there's no character at the lodge named the Red Queen, and Devera never mentions her in dialogue. There's not even an NPC named the Red Queen, and this single line seems to be the only remaining mention of this character in the game files. It's unknown who she was, why she was important enough for Devera to be happy that she drank at her lodge, or if she was actual royalty, but it's possible she's connected to a strange location south of Bruma called Unmarked Cave. When you enter this cave, there's a path that splits off in 2 directions. To the left is a long winding path populated by low-level enemies defending a few chests, but there's nothing of note or significance here. If you take the path to the right, there's a locked door that requires a unique key to open, but this key doesn't actually exist in the game files, making a large portion of this cell inaccessible during normal play. By turning off collision, we can clip through the door and explore this unused part of the cell, which is filled with more low-level enemies and chests, but again, nothing notable. This path eventually leads to an unused cell called Unmarked Cave Mazeway. There's a short underwater path that leads to 2 large sections of land separated by a chasm of water. On one side of this cavern, there's a chest that spawns nothing and a door that leads to yet another unused cell, this one called Black Queen's Hall. Inside this cut area is another chest, but unlike the others, this one is tantalizingly called MS-25 Dungeon Mythic Enemy Rare 01. MS is a prefix used for certain quests, implying there was a cut quest revolving around this dungeon, and the mysterious Black Queen was most likely the antagonist. Notably, the quest before this one, MS-24, is also missing from the game files. Unmarked Cave was intended to be a multi-level dungeon, complete with traps, secret doors, diverging paths, loot, and a unique boss, but at some point this was cut, the entrance to these unfinished cells was permanently closed off, and the location became nothing more than a forgettable dungeon. Given the similarity of their names, it's possible the Black Queen was somehow related to the Red Queen in Shadenhall. Perhaps the Red Queen once sent the player to kill the Black Queen because she was trifling. It's certainly possible these characters are completely unrelated though, and we might be looking at 2 totally different scrap quests. Across from Rosethorn Hall in Skingrad, there's a strange house called Nerestrol's house, but there's not actually an NPC named Nerestrol in the game files, and he's only mentioned a single time in-game apart from the name of these cells. During the quest Lost Histories, the player retrieves a book from behind Nerestrol's house, and Amuse specifically mentions this character despite not actually existing.
Look under the bush near the well behind Nerestrol's house. I was going to take it for myself, but I owe you a great debt. You should take it.
While the outside of the house seems normal, the interior seems to have been abandoned for some time, and several undead are set up to spawn. It seems very likely there were plans for a quest to take place here, but every trace of it was either deleted or never implemented. There is alchemy equipment and books on magic upstairs, so perhaps Nerestrol conjured up the undead found inside his house. An abandoned house overrun by undead is definitely an interesting setup, but unfortunately, this strange house is all that remains of Nerestrol's story.
Welcome to the Oak Crozier. This one is Talisma, your hostess. Our rooms and food are at your disposal.
There's a rumor that implicates the Oak and Crozier in some shady behavior, but in the final game, there's nothing shady going on there, and this line is one of the last in-game remnants of a quest that was seemingly once given by the owner of the inn, Talisma.
I could be wrong, but it seems to me there's something shady going on at the Oak and Crozier.
There's an unused dialogue topic that might imply Talisma was a member of the Renrijakrin, or was at least tangled up with them somehow. She also has 2 other empty dialogue topics, yes and no, suggesting she was asking the player to either aid or fight against the Renrijakrin. The basement cell of the inn is set up to play combat music, suggesting a fight would have occurred here during the quest, but no enemies are set up to spawn. Beyond this, it's completely unknown how the quest would have played out, or exactly what was going on inside the inn. There is a still for brewing in the basement, so perhaps it was a skooma operation. Books and dialogue reveal that the Renrijakrin are a Khajiit revolutionary group trying to liberate their ancestral homeland. The land around the lower Nibian River and the Nibian Bay is constantly under border disputes between Elsewhere and Cyrodil, and during the time Oblivion takes place, this land is a part of Cyrodil. Despite the lore, it seems this region has always been shown as a part of Cyrodil in every official map I could find. Regardless, the Renrijakrin are trying to reclaim this land from Imperial control using guerrilla warfare, and fund their movement by smuggling skooma, thieving, and other criminal activity. On the other hand, Drell's Theron, who was sent to Bravil to fight the Renrijakrin, mentions this.
Drell's Theron. I'm the Count's Special Inquisitor in charge of suppressing the Renrijakrin insurgents. The Renrijakrin are Khajiit bandits and smugglers, posing as guerrillas and freedom fighters.
It's unknown if Drell's line is Imperial propaganda, or if it's true and the group is nothing more than criminals using revolution as a guise. Dialogue in Bravil and Leowyn suggests they're a significant threat to Imperial control in these areas, and this cut quest suggests they had some degree of influence as far as Korhal, but they have very little presence in the final game.
That skooma trade is bad business. And the Renrijakrin are just a bunch of thugs. The skooma trade is making a lot of money for the tribes and Elsewhere, and a lot of that is going to the Renrijakrin.
Perhaps there were once plans to include camps and smuggling operations throughout Blackwood, but if so, there's no trace of them. There is a faction for the Renrijakrin, but it only contains a single NPC, and this faction is only used behind the scenes for the quest, nothing you can possess. It seems there was once much more planned for Talisma, the Oaken Crozier, and most importantly, the Renrijakrin. They were a genuinely interesting group that could have added a meaningful conflict to Oblivion, but ultimately they're only mentioned in a few lines of dialogue and a couple books. There is a mod called Roving Renrijakrin, which adds Renrijakrin bandits and camps into Oblivion, and if you're interested in checking it out, there's a link below in the description. There are several rumors in Korhal about a character named Strantus, who was apparently a quest-giving NPC.
Not a bad idea if you're looking for work. Not me. I've got plenty to do at home. I had heard he was looking for some help.
He's mentioned in one of the scripts used in Korhal, and his position in this script suggests that he was one of the very first NPCs added to Korhal, but every other remaining reference to him and whatever work he was offering appears to have been deleted. Unfortunately, there is so little left of this that it's difficult to even speculate on how the quest would have appeared. There's a cut quest called MS-17 internally, but the quest name was deleted from the English game files. In certain localizations of Oblivion, the name still remains, however, and it was called Doran's Family Troubles. It revolved around Giralind and Ariella Doran, 2 NPCs in Korhal who have no unique dialogue or really anything that differentiates them from other minor characters. The journal logs and much of the dialogue for this quest still exists, and gives us a detailed idea of how it would have played out. NPCs in Korhal would mention that Giralind believed his bloodline was distantly related to ogres.
I heard Doran again today going on about his ogre relatives. Poor guy. I think he's gone off the deep end. Ariella Doran really needs to do something about her husband. The man's lost his mind. Thinks he's part ogre.
A remnant of this still exists in their home, a family tree that depicts a giant. You'd think this would be the only place this quest-related asset would be used, but it's strangely used again inside the ruins of an old house in the area Goblin Gem's White Skin City. I'm not sure if this was meant to imply that one of Gerald's ancestors lived inside the cave, or if it was placed here purely for aesthetic purposes after this quest was cut. Gerald would ask the player to bring an offering of gems and gold to a location called Spy Rock, but this area doesn't actually appear in the final game.
You don't just barge into people's homes, you know. Wait, you're not here about the ogres, are you? If so, word about my work must be spreading. Coral? I'm not interested in local gossip. I just want to prove to the world that ogres are people, just like you and me. In fact, I think we have a lot in common with ogres. If only someone were to take the first step in communicating with them. Yes, of course, you're right. We shouldn't make direct contact, at least not at first. We'll need to sound them out, so to speak. Since I've done quite a lot of research, it only makes sense that I would be the one to take that step. But I don't think my wife would understand. Oh, hello there. You'll have to excuse me, but I'm a bit preoccupied at the moment. Thought I saw some sign of giants off in the distance. Perhaps if we gave them some sort of offering, a way of letting them know we mean them no harm. Why, you're not interested in ogres too, are you? I find them simply fascinating. Most people dismiss them as monsters, but I think that's too rash. Did you know that ogres are actually very closely related to the enlightened races? I don't have the source on me, but I assure you, it's true. I knew you'd agree. But I can't do this alone, so I'll need your help. From everything I've learned, Spy Rock seems to be the best place to start. Just leave these items on the ground there, and we'll hope the ogres pick them up. Then we'll figure out how to make direct contact. We'll need to place the offering somewhere nearby, yet in a location they'll see. Perhaps it's Spy Rock. Yes. Splendid. Yeah. That's an excellent idea, friend. What a brilliant idea. I understand that ogres are fond of bright, shiny objects. Here, take these and leave them on the ground at Spy Rock. It's the perfect place to try and make contact with the ogres, don't you think? It's an abandoned Imperial watch in the mountains southeast of town. Ogres pass through there regularly, from what I understand. I need you to drop some things off there as a peace offering to the ogres. I understand they like shiny things. So I've brought these. We can't proceed any further until you've been to Spy Rock. Have you placed the offering there?
There is a cell near Battleborn Castle called Spy Rock Exterior, implying that Spy Rock also had an interior. Gerald's dialogue mentions that it's an old Imperial watchtower, and perhaps it would have been a dungeon, but this is speculation considering how little of the location remains. A nearby road leads to a dead end, and perhaps it was once placed where the road stops. This tribute was meant to establish communication between Gerald and the ogres. After leaving the offering at Spy Rock, the player would return to Gerald and he'd tell the player to wait a week before returning to check on the progress he's made with the ogres.
You did it, eh? Wonderful. Now it's only a matter of time. I think we should give it a week and see if the ogres have accepted our offering. We need to give them some more time. Don't want to rush things and risk scaring them off. We'll have to keep this to ourselves, of course. Don't want anyone taking the credit for our work. Just come back and see me in a week. Have you done it? Have you been to Spy Rock? Yes. Once we've given it some time, we can see if the ogres found the offering we left for them. This is so exciting, isn't it? I assure you, I will be going nowhere near there anytime soon. In fact, it will probably be a while before I have the courage to leave town. I can't thank you enough for helping me. I'm not sure where I went wrong, but I do know that I'll be keeping my distance from any ogres from now on. I've had my fill of ogres for quite some time. Thank you very much. You made it. Oh, how wonderful. I can hardly contain myself. Waiting to see if the ogres find our offering is so difficult. We should split up and head back to Coral so as to bring as little attention to ourselves as possible. I'm going to head back now.
After waiting a week and returning to Core Hall, NPCs would mention that Geraldine had gone missing.
Ariella Doran's been in such a fright since her husband went missing. I heard that Geraldine Doran just disappeared. Probably wandered off in search of his relatives. What a kook.
Ariella would tell the player that Geraldine had gone to Spy Rock but never came back, and she would desperately ask you to save him. Dialogue for this was actually recorded in some localizations, and she even has cut dialogue telling the player to get out of their house that would have played before the quest had started. It seems that some localizations, like the German version, have dialogue from an earlier build of Oblivion that was either deleted or never recorded for the English version. Somewhere in Spy Rock, the player would find a note written by Geraldine stating he had been captured by ogres and then taken to the ogre's home at Rock Bottom Caverns. Rock Bottom Caverns does appear in the final game, but it seems that after this quest was cut, the ogres were replaced by goblins, and the dungeon became a somewhat forgettable secondary location. The player would then have to fight their way past the ogres and rescue Geraldine. The goblins here have rats locked up in pens, and I can't help but wonder if Geraldine was once imprisoned inside one of them. After rescuing him, the player would get the following journal entry. Geraldine will head back to Core Hall on his own. I can either head there myself, or go back into Rock Bottom Caverns to raid the stores of treasure the ogres have collected.
Oh, thank Akatosh you're here. This is all a disaster. You got the note I left. Good thing I stopped long enough to write it, eh? Please, you've got to help me get out of here. There must be a way to free me and watch out for the giants. They're exceptionally strong. When we arrived, they locked me up here and I think they want to eat me. You've got to help me get out of here. You should find your way back there too. Though I did see some treasure further down into the cave. I think I may have misjudged the ogre's intentions. Thank you so much. I still don't know how I could have misjudged this situation so horribly, but perhaps now is not the time to dwell on it. I don't know what I did wrong. They seemed affable enough. They even invited me back to their home here. Ah, look at the sky. I feared I'd never see it again. We've got to get out of this cave. Can you lead the way?
Geraldine has an AI package that would have been used as he returned home, and the marker for this still appears inside of his house, but both are never used. Finally, the player could return to Core Hall, and Geraldine would reward them with some of the gems and gold he originally gave to the ogres. The final quest objective reveals Geraldine could have died during the quest if the player didn't protect him. There's an additional cut quest called MS-17 Finn, which would have been used to play this line after the completion of the quest.
Let's just keep this thing about the ogres as our little secret. Please?
Doran's family troubles had a totally ridiculous premise and could have been really fun, so it's too bad it never made it in. The citizens of Core Hall will sometimes talk about the sketchy behavior of Ugal Bellet and mention they've heard strange noises coming from his basement.
Have you heard the odd noises coming from Ugal Bellet's place?
Ugal Bellet is an odd one. And I swear I heard strange noises coming from his basement not long ago.
I'm not so sure about that Ugal Bellet. An odd fellow. And people have said there are strange noises coming from his house at all hours.
If you investigate Ugal's basement, you'll find human remains and items that reveal he's actually a sleeper agent of the Mythic Dawn. He spends 2 hours a day inside the basement, but is only set up to stand at the entrance for that time before leaving. Even if you catch him down here, you can't confront him, his dialogue doesn't change, and you can't bring up this discovery to any other characters. After the completion of the Dagon Shrine quest, the sleeper agents become active and Ugal will actually attack the player, but it seems there was once an entire quest centered around him. Bethesda did a good job deleting most assets related to cut quest, but a few dialogue topics managed to slip through the cracks. Ugal was somehow related to a book called Mythic Dawn Postulates, As the player could say, "It's just a book I found." It's possible he was in possession of it, or perhaps he wrote it, but we can only speculate. Another line states, "From Yugal Bullet," which might imply he had the book in his possession. Another cut line about the book reads, "From inside a campsite inside Sankrator," revealing the book would have been found at a camp somewhere inside Sankrator. It's possible Yugal would have traveled there during the quest, but this is simply a guess. The last dialogue topic suggests that Yugal would have attacked the player during the quest, and that after defeating him, another NPC would have asked the player about the attack, as the player could say, "Bellet attacked me, I killed him." It's completely unknown who this other character was, and it's possible they were cut along with the quest. Unfortunately, very little of this quest remains, but it seems like it would have been a cool adventure.
Urjabi helps his brothers, Renjira and Hasiri, to run the Black Horse Courier. Others write, we organize, we deliver. The news never stops.
The Dark Horse Courier is a newspaper company located in the Market District of Imperial City. There are no quests associated with this location in the final game, but there was once meant to be an expansive quest line called the Imperial Express that revolved around delivering letters from the Dark Horse Courier to 14 NPCs in other major cities of Cyrodil. When traveling to the Market District for the first time, a new dialogue topic becomes available: do you need couriers? This line is one of the last in-game remnants of the quest line, but it can never be discussed with any of the game's characters. This seemingly would have become available when speaking to one of the Khajiit owners. There is then two player lines for accepting or rejecting the quest: "I'll take the job," and "not for that paltry sum." There's also a dialogue topic called Imperial Express Give Letter, which would have been used when delivering each letter, and a subsequent line, Delivered Letter, would have been used to complete a delivery at the Dark Horse Courier before moving on to the next one. There's an unused script related to the quest, and it has variables that give us an idea of how the quest would have functioned. There's a variable for the player opening the letters, and perhaps there would have been important information in some of these that would have led to other quest objectives or linked to other quests. There's also a variable for the player delivering the letter late, implying there was a time limit for each delivery, and perhaps the rewards you received hinged on how fast you delivered each letter. Finally, it lists the NPCs you would have delivered these letters to, and while some of these characters are involved in quest, some of them have no quest associated with them in the final game. Each of the 14 letter recipients is also linked to an AI package that checks to see if they're still alive. If they are, another seemingly unrelated NPC will travel to the Black Horse Courier at a specific time on a certain day of each month. Despite this quest being cut, all of these AI packages are strangely still used, and you may notice some of these 14 other characters traveling to the Black Horse Courier. For example, if Devera is still alive, a Khajiit named Rahan will travel to the Black Horse Courier and hang out there a bit before leaving. It seems likely these characters were sending the letters that the player needed to deliver, but in-game this behavior is just an oddity that Bethesda forgot to cut out. There is also an unused faction called 8 Cities Couriers Customers, which contains the same pool of NPCs. It mentions a cut character named Curtis, a low-level Red Guard. His editor ID suggests he would have appeared in the Temple District, and his inventory contains a key to his house, suggesting that his house once appeared somewhere in that cell too. He has a unique line that can never be heard normally.
I'm Curtis. I'm nobody special.
Curtis has detailed AI packages that would have taken him from his house in the Temple District to Shaden Hall and the Black Horse Courier. It seems likely this character was cut alongside the quest line, and then his house was either deleted or another NPC was moved into it. There's also some cut lines which might imply this early delivery service incarnation was originally called the Dark Horse Courier.
Haven't you heard? Bayanlin's been killed. The Dark Horse Courier has a special edition with the story. Here, take my copy.
It seems that at some point this questline was cut, the location was rewritten to be a newspaper, and even renamed. This quest had the potential to be really interesting and would have given several NPCs an actual quest, so it's genuinely too bad it was scrapped. These quests would have made Oblivion into an even better game. Ultimately though, all of this was left on the cutting room floor.